I'm sure you will agree with me that we have listened to 3 powerful papers, and I would like to thank you all who presented this session. We will take some questions, but before then, I would like to refresh your minds as to what these papers were all about. Reverend Daniel Hernandez presented the paper on economic justice, advocacy as spiritual activism. And he took time to explain to us what religion really is and the role of religion in human society and human development, and especially with in the area of economic justice. Religion is so important. It deals with the essential values of human existence. It deals with the sanctity of life. It deals with ideals of egalitarianism and every element you would dream for a good society and for peace and all that. He affirmed that religion promotes or should promote justice. And he went on to speak about spiritual activism, and he made a very important statement, which I'm quite sure some of you will also recall. When people suffer injustice, it is an indictment of the religion they profess. He probably will have to explain that a whole lot more. And the way I understand it is, if religious people remain passive, unresponsive to human situations, then they must take responsibility for the injustice that has occurred. If they are silent, they do not speak to power, they do not criticize, they do not accomplish the prophetic role they are supposed to do to criticize society, then they have to take responsibility. And that's how I understood that, probably. He went on to tell us, first of all, we must honor every religion, because every religion has the structure, the value structures that can lead any human being to fulfillment and actually bring fulfillment and peace to human society. But religion can hardly fulfill this function if it remains fragmented. So nothing will be accomplished. And that fragmentation is the basis for the conflict that actually we experience. And the conflict you can find in yourself. And it seems to me that at the end he says, religion can do a whole lot, but let it begin with me, resolve the conflict I have, and then I am able to speak to the larger conflict that exists. And we had another paper from Shinwari, Pakistan, paper Identity, Conflict, and Economic Development in Pakistan. And we're very happy he brought the geography and some people who don't know where Pakistan is, they saw it on the map today. And but he made a statement he attributed to the Prophet Muhammad: no Arab is superior to non-Arab. So, which is very important. I think it should be a very strong basis for dialogue and discussions. The problem in Pakistan and in that area he traces the historical causes of it. He didn't just start one early morning, something came out of nowhere and started. There is history going on. An area that has been subjected to terrible violence, terrible discrimination, terrible conflict. There have been the Islamization of a type that bordered on extremes. And you have Iranian Revolution, all these things, Ayatollah, things come up, so that there was the tranquility that existed before. All of it came and became shattered because we have one revolution after another. And then you have the powerful people with oil. Saudi Arabia, they're all there coming in, Iraq war going on. The Mujahideen, all soldiers of God, fighting for God. At the end of it, what we have? United States invasion and going on. Imagine some area subjected to this type of horrible violence. And so, at the end of the day, that the situation would bring itself to bear very negatively on economics is very certain. And that is exactly what he demonstrated with showing us the statistics and how the statistics would actually, the GDP would reflect the statistics, number of people killed, so that's the paper. The paper actually maybe didn't propose any way to actually deal with this problem. Maybe it is in the longer paper. How do you begin to deal with this type of identity resolution in such a way that we can promote economic development? And we have the final paper now by Kawalya Isa, and he started with telling us, standing up here, raising his hands and said, I don't need to speak to you. If you want to know about interfaith, here I am. It is. It's my family. It's my father and my mother, my family. We are interfaith. And it seems that it has worked out so well for you. I hope so, that you're a great model of interfaith. What we find in so many families all over the world, where you have people from different religions, even those who are Catholics may remember that in the past a Catholic wouldn't marry from another religion, but now you find Catholics marry Jews and all that, so that in some very, very important ways, dialogue and interfaith are coming up. But he went on and in this presentation to speak about the situation actually in Uganda, the various religious groups, and how they stand either with government or how they stand with materialism and those who have material resources, and how the differentiations actually could create a very fertile, competitive ground eventually for dialogue going forward. Methodology, very well researched paper, mentioned people, including Hans Kuhn, those who have actually given us great theories for interfaith dialogue going on. The paper went on to talk about the challenges, and there are very many he enumerates the challenges, because the understanding the challenges tell us that to make any progress, first of all, you got to understand actually what interreligious and interfaith, what they really mean. Do they really mean the same thing? Or probably they require the same conditions to succeed. They require that human beings, first of all, recognize who they are and their religions and understand their religions, because you can't argue from a position of ignorance. You can't do that. They have to do that. But also that there has to be empathy. There has to be empathy. People have to, there has to be respect, all these coming up. There has to be communication. There has to be language. You speak well. You respect others. That's the only way you can dialogue with them. And that inflexibility and actually taking extreme positions, no, it's not going to work. It's almost like going to be what we find with the Buddha, the middle path. No extremes, can help. And he ended up with telling us his own personal involvement in this program, and that also warned us that it is work in progress. That you actually, the ideal thing is to try to come up the next week and said, oh, we have succeeded in resolving every conflict. In religious dialogue has succeeded in actually making perfect peace. No, but everybody, every hand on the deck, the nation at the national level, community level. So with this, I hope we refreshed our minds. And if you have any questions for any of them, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My question goes to our Pakistani friend. Yes. When I was doing my Ph.D. coursework at Nova Southeastern University, I was very much interested in the Middle Eastern conflicts. And one of the books, in fact, a lot of books we read about Pakistan, Afghanistan, conflict. And so I was so fascinated when I heard you say that the Pakistani government was training those they call the good Talibans. So my question is, how would you analyze the Soviet invasion in Afghanistan and the training of the good Taliban with the support of the U.S., the support that the U.S. gave to Pakistan to fight Al-Qaeda using the Taliban? And how would you also analyze that? How did that result in the emergence, in fact, the emergence of ISIS? And then how would you want to link it up to the resultant effect, the economic devastation, economic underdevelopment, or economic gain for some nations? So it's very complex anyway, so I just wanted you to do that.
I would start by saying that sometimes countries are pretty much like human beings. Their psychology, like they will follow their interests. They will, try to satisfy their interest and their needs. In 1980s, like the entire world, I would say the capitalist bloc were facing a threat from Russian blocs. Afghanistan was a signatory to the Russian bloc. They had signed security, they had security agreements with each other. So when Russia invaded into Afghanistan, like there are many conspiracy theories, and if I'm wrong, my friend can correct me. When Afghanistan came, I would say, Soviet Union came into Afghanistan, the Western bloc propagated a propaganda that Afghanistan has been invaded, right? And like they say, Russia want to invade Pakistan, reach to the warm water, so Arabian Sea, right? There are many ports, and then reach to attack Saudi Arabia and control oil fields at that time, So no one knows if it was reality or not. But United States was like they were fighting a war, a proxy war, for dominance of their ideologies, capitalism and socialism or Marxism. So they had a better chance, and the last resort, to fight a war with Russian. And Russian seems to be at a weaker side because Russia was invited by the Afghan government because there was an insurgency, a political situation which led to the uprising in Afghanistan, inside Afghanistan, and Afghanistan government invited Russia to come and curb those. It was not Islamist at that time. It was a political based problems in Afghanistan. Russia when landed in Afghanistan, so it proved to be a destruction for Russian as well. But it paved way for a perpetual destruction and conflict for coming 3, 4, or 4 decades for Afghanistan and for Pakistan. Next, you mentioned about Al-Qaeda. So Al-Qaeda was like a third party between Pakistan and Taliban. And my friend mentioned Pashtun codes. Like Pashtun is a tribe which is majority in Afghanistan and minority in Pakistan. And like the Taliban, they are majority Pashtuns because Pashtuns are hardcore Islamist, and they had deep affinities toward Islam religion. And this was the reason they were controlling Afghanistan, because Taliban was, they were Pashtun and they were Islamist, and they taken over Kabul. And and this Pashtun code, there is one cultural aspect. If someone comes to your home and say, I need a shelter in your home, so you will have to protect him at any cost. Al-Qaeda at that time, in 1997, if I'm wrong, there was attack on U.S. Embassy in Kenya, I guess, or Nairobi, yeah. So there were attacks. So Al-Qaeda came into radar of the United States. Like in 1997, like 3 years or 4 years before 9/11. Al-Qaeda then tried to take refuge in Afghanistan because Afghanistan was also a Taliban government. By then, there was no connection between Taliban, Islamic insurgents, and Al-Qaeda. They both based their movement and campaign on the basis of religious ideologies. So in 9/11, when 9/11 occurred, Al-Qaeda had no role of government governance in Afghanistan. So the Taliban, after 9/11, U.S. Demanded the Taliban government to hand over Al-Qaeda. They say, no, they are our guests. So this was one point, which, the start of the tussle between the Taliban in U.S. and Afghanistan. So these are stories and books and theory. I was 13 years old at that time, and I have no idea, what went on under the table at that time. So, yes. And U.S. and Pakistan relations. United States is Pakistan's biggest economic partner. Pakistan export 17% of trade with the United States. It's because in 1947, when Pakistan came into existence after the withdrawal of the British Empire from the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan had a choice whether to join a Russian bloc or to join American bloc. So their interests are connected with each other. And since then, they both are, favoring each other. In 1990s, India did nuclear explosions, So it was a threat for Pakistan. So Pakistan did it as well. And like there are reports that United States turned blind eyes toward Pakistan's this pursuit. Although you have an idea of what North Korea is going through and what Iran is going through. They are paying huge price for getting, I would say, nuclear arsenal. But Pakistan did it. Why? Because at that time, U.S. needed Pakistan's support in Afghanistan, against Russia. And they both got what they wanted. So they both are tied. they both are tied too much with each other, United States and Pakistan. I hope this was what you asked. Thank you.
But what about Osama bin Laden?
Yeah.
When you talked about Saudi Arabia, Osama bin Laden that founded
Yes, in Pakistan.
Pakistan. Was he there from Saudi Arabia to fight the Taliban? And that's basically, and all that connection to 9/11 and the rise of ISIS.
Okay, yes, ISIS. I missed this point. ISIS is, it is a very later episode of this entire insurgency. It's a totally, different a chapter of this conflict, which was started from Middle East. But Osama bin Laden was, he was also a good guy, a good boy of United States at one point. Then he became, a bad guy of the United States. Right, there are much you can read about him, right? So he went to Afghanistan. He went there as a refugee, and then I guess you are also referring to the point when Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan. Now we don't know about this story, right? Our Prime Minister 1 month ago, in his speech in United Nations General Assembly, mentioned that Pakistan cooperated with United States intelligence in capturing Osama bin Laden. So this was for the first time Pakistan government did this statement. Before that, like there were reports on media that how he was found in Pakistan. Although Pakistan has all kind of weapons and state-of-the-art advanced missile and technologies, and they can, shoot down those helicopters which went into 300, 400 kilometers inside Pakistan from Afghanistan and capture Osama bin Laden and taken away back to Afghanistan, So it was like, according to our Prime Minister, it was in connection, in cooperation with the government of Pakistan and its intelligence reports, like they captured Osama bin Laden and, fulfilled goals of the United States. Thank you.
Since your questions, Mr. Basil, is related to somehow Afghanistan and Pakistan, and I'm not a politician, but every Afghan has some tendency to politics and have his or her point of view regarding politics nowadays in Afghanistan. The issue of Osama bin Laden, first, Osama bin Laden, it's Arabic name. Also my name, and his name is Arabic. But Osama is names that Arabs use, not countries, South Asia countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and other countries. They do not use. Osama was one of the son and grandson related to billionaire family from Saudi Arabia. This first point to mention, and you know all. Second, he was fighting, he had affiliation with terrorists who did the terrorist attack on U.S. Embassy in Kenya, in Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, and then had a relation with Imal al-Zawahiri from Egypt, Misr we call that, not from Afghanistan. But he was killed, not he, also Akhtar Mansour, as well as the head of Taliban that I already mentioned and presented, Mullah Omar. They were killed in the sanctuaries that are located within Pakistan, not Afghanistan. But yes, I totally admit that we have a long border with Pakistan, more than 2,500 kilometers. Without having any wall, like nowadays Donald Trump is making that. We do not have, this is the mountain, from the mountain you cross, this is Afghanistan, this side is Pakistan. And people who are living that side of the border, Pakistan, they have the same clothes like my people who are living this side of the country. So they have the same language, culture, and they share everything. Regarding the ISIS, I should tell you that when ISIS was defeated, officially in Syria. ISIS, it means Islamic State of Iraq and Sham. Syria we call now. Syria, before its name was Sham, its Arabic name. Then when this was officially defeated in the Middle East region, they emerged again. Emerge or merge, because I emerged. So back in Afghanistan, at the border of Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Shinwari district, located at maybe 300 kilometers to the capital city of Kabul. It was officially emerged in 2014 or end of 2014-15, at the beginning of 2015 in Afghanistan. And there is no correlation between Al-Qaeda, yeah, but we can name them the most extremist Al-Qaeda group, because in Al-Qaeda and Taliban, they do not kill people. They do not kill local people. As you see in the picture, that they were discussing and integrated with local people, with rural people. But when ISIS entered Afghanistan, specifically that part of Afghanistan at the east, they were killing Muslims, non-Muslims. Why they were killing non-Muslims? They totally killed. So our Muslims were blamed that you are cooperating with the government. You're letting your sons and daughters to school. You're letting your son and your daughters to work with the government. That's why we have to kill you. Like Boko Haram, I don't know maybe if there is any similarities with that sort of group in Nigeria or other parts of the world. So I think there should be a difference. But once again, I want to emphasize that the most leaders of Taliban, and my friends also agree on this point, that they are trained, still they are, we call in Arabic madrasa. Madrasa as meaning school, Islamic school. Still there are Islamic schools, you can add more in this point, that now they are training people, students who are younger, they are brainwashing them and sending them to Afghanistan to kill innocent people. Why? They are taught that people of the Afghanistan, they are kafir, what do we call it? Non-believer. Infidel. Yeah, I was searching for this word. Infidel. They are working with American troops. They are cooperating with NATO forces. They are taught like that. They are brainwashed when they are at school level, 12 years old, 13. So at 12 years. And then they are coming to Afghanistan. Financially, they are supported by Saudi Arabia. The policy is made by UK. And technically, they are supported by US. Why? There is two blocks. Afghanistan is a country located, is a strategic country. From the north, there is the presence of Russia. Why Tajikistan now? Why Russia has a huge presence, an influential presence in Tajikistan? Soldiers at the border. At the northeast is China. We borders with China. At the south, at the east and south, we borders with Pakistan. At the southeast, we borders with another powerful countries nowadays. You know about that, Iran. So it's a strategic, a core point. Now everyone is trying, every powerful countries, 3 P5 countries, let's say, 3 members of Security Councils, Pakistan, China, Russia, US, they are fighting to dominate these strategic points. When they have the total or the complete control of this country, they can influence in other countries, in north, in east, in south, in other countries. That's why all issues related to war, conflicts are arising in this point of the war. Sorry for that, I explained too much.
Didn't they call this the great game?
Yeah, it is the new great game. They call it the new great game. Yeah. The second chapter of.
Thank you. Does it work?
Yes.
Thank you a lot for your patient and outstanding speeches. My question goes to, I think, Daniel Medina. It is because it concerns religion. You know, in the south of Russia, there are a lot of terrorist groups. I mean, there is young generation that is influenced by unfair people, unfair, we can say, organizations, and they try to impose radical Islam on a young generation of Caucasus. I mean, the south of Russia. So a lot of people just afraid now of religion in Islam in Caucasus. So the question is how to understand where is an authentic religion and where is a fake which is used as a tool just to influence young generations and to use them like terrorists or something like that to gain some benefits. So,
Your name and where you're coming from. Your name.
So my name is Marina Dudaeva. I'm from Russian Federation. Namely, I was born in Caucasus, so I know this is a big problem, and a lot of people just really afraid of religion. They try to be, they are skeptical nowadays because they are afraid to be imposed by these radical forces and terrorists.
Thank you so much for your question. I always follow a litmus test, which is if any religion attempts to rob the dignity of one of its members and to destroy the very creation that the religion claims that God created, that's a good reason to run away. No religion that is authentic seeks to destroy its members. No religion that is authentic seeks to use its members for the purposes that are contrary to what the faith teaches. And despite the great campaign of misinformation, Islam is a religion of peace. The sad thing is that most of the individuals that are making these comments have not read the Quran. And so what we find is that, again, no religion, not even Buddhism, is exempt from a history of violence. And so I think that what we also need to do is find the points of common ground. But I would say that most young people around the world are fascinated by the existential promises and perspectives that religion offer. It's when religion begins to become what thwarts their future, what threatens their peace, and what takes away their individuality through judgment, war, and poverty, that we begin to be questioning of it. I would. And in fact, one of the reasons why I've embraced this course of thought and of reflection and of research is because I had a very interesting experience at Starbucks, and I'd like to share it with all of you. I was finishing a presentation, and I was in Central Florida. And as I'm waiting for my cup of coffee, I see that there is this lady staring at me, and I'm wearing a collar. And finally, when my drink is about to come, she comes up to me and she says, "I hate you. I hate what you're wearing. I hate what you represent. And I hate what you teach." And I looked at her and I said, "Forgive me, and forgive us all. Because if you feel that way, there's probably a good reason for why you do. I'm so sorry." And in saying that to her, which I thought she probably expected me to start giving her excuses and explanations, no, I think we need to take ownership for the fact that in the 20th century, not even Islam, Christianity has been the greatest purveyor of violence in the 20th century. And I think we need to come to terms with that. The United States, predominantly Protestant, we're the ones that bring the nuclear age. Germany, predominantly Roman and Lutheran. What else can we say in the Second World War? Former Soviet Union with orthodoxy in its beautiful expression. More than 70 years of tyranny. We have a lot to take in account for conflict, for colonization, all in the name of a man who didn't even have a pillow to lay his head on. So that would be my guidance for you. If it threatens you, run away. You're welcome.
Okay. So my question also goes to Daniel Medina-Hernandez. During your presentation, and it was a very good presentation actually.
Thank you, sir.
I started to think about those Latin American Catholic priests from the liberation theology that stated that the social and economical justice as a main part of their religious practice. all those spiritual activists suffered very strong resistance from the Catholic Church hierarchy, though some of them were even excommunicated and all that. I would like to know if you, in your personal experience, have suffered with institutional resistance from Anglican leaders, and if yes, how to deal with that.
Thank you. That's a question that's very dear to me. We have a saying that we want bishops with báculos, which is the actual staff that the bishop wears, that we would rather them be of wood than of gold. And what we mean by that is that there is unfortunately a hierarchy that does seek the status quo. In the case of liberation theologians, Gustavo Gutierrez, for instance, which is the most famous, and of course Leonardo Boff, but then also individuals like Ernesto Cardenal in Nicaragua, and although not a priest, certainly connected to that was Paulo Fieri in Brazil, or your presentation also was wonderful, obrigado. One of the things that I find is the case of Camilo Torres in Colombia, who actually ended up going to the extreme and turned his cassock over and picked up an AK-47. That's the radical case of going to the extremes, which my brother talked about, that anytime you go to an extreme, that's it, you've lost the cause. Anytime any religious leader seeks to promote the real radical, which comes from the word to return to the roots of the faith, you're going to run against power. Because being a man of the cloth comes with power, comes with prestige. And in Latin America and in the Caribbean, unfortunately, there's only 3 ways to get out of poverty still, which is a medieval model. You become a politician, you become a general, or you become a priest. Or a pastor of an independent movement such as the one that you're talking about. Have I acquired or have I experienced challenges? Yes, I have. Which is the reason why I'm a school teacher by day, and I have a very small parish where the average age is about 60, and they're not worried about the things of status. They're concerned about the big questions of existence, and I appreciate that. It's a very open, liberal group. But yes, I found myself having to negotiate at times. Do I stand and speak truth to power, or do I simply submit? And ironically, that's a big deal. In the 1960s and in the 1970s, in the Protestant, in the mainline Protestant traditions in the United States, there was this huge movement of becoming more liberal and progressive. And that has its origins really with Schleiermacher and eventually with Troschel and Walter Rauschenbusch in 1918 in the United States with the social gospel movement. That first wave, which inspired Dr. Martin Luther King, and in some interesting way also inspired Malcolm Little, which we all know as Malcolm X. And his lineage, of course, with Marcus Garvey and a lot of these resistance movements in the Caribbean. And a return to Africa because of the incessant institutionalized racism that you find in the United States at that time, challenged some of the more unfortunate aspects of mainline Christianity. For instance, the what I call the Englishization of Jesus, where most of the depictions of Jesus, first of all, is not Jewish. He's white with aquiline features. And this notion that Jesus was Jewish also brought along the anti-Semitism of Christianity. And so one of the things that I've been fighting for is to bring Jesus back to being Jewish. He's a Jew. He's not white. He's not English. He doesn't speak with a British accent, which only represents 1% of the British population. He's probably darker skinned than I am.
He's African.
He's African. Well, actually, he's Middle Eastern, but he's dark skinned. And if you think of the consequences of being 33 years old in the first century in Palestine, his skin is extremely dark, very rugged, and a man that does not just speak Aramaic. He speaks Aramaic, he speaks Hebrew, he speaks probably some Latin, and he speaks Greek, Kene, first century Greek. So he's a man that is not in some, neck of the woods, almost like the musical Godspell from back in the day. So I think we need to reconfigure faith. But saying these things brought a lot of problems to me. I think that Christians, Jews, Muslims, Zoroastrians, Jains, what have you, I think we really need to take Gandhi's words very seriously. I love the man of sorrows, well acquainted with grief, that's walking around in the Gospels, but I don't necessarily like those that represent him today. And that's very humbling to me. The collar represents really that we're slaves, not that we're privileged. And so, I think that's where we need to begin. Great humility, asking truth in forgiveness for the wrongs that we have done, and start living with the fact that we're all broken. We're all broken, brother. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And maybe I wanted to, this question will actually also be part of what I wanted to ask you about, just for clarification. Well, is there any difference between ecclesiastical actions and spiritual activism with regard to promoting, with regard to advocacy of economic justice? Are they the same thing?
I don't necessarily see them as the same. In fact, I was sharing with my brother that your presentation about my presentation was better than my presentation. So I thank you. And yes, that's what I meant by indictment. I believe that spiritual activism must be a grassroots process, which you clarified and depicted in what's going on with Uganda, but it has to be just not in Uganda, everywhere, New York, Miami, LA, London, Kingston. The reality is that it has to be a grassroots spiritual movement, because it is conscientization, which was Paulo Freire talks about in Pedagogy for the Oppressed. That is the way that we reconfigure ecclesiology to no longer be the seedbed of divisiveness, but the center of unity. So it calls for all of us, lay and ordained. It doesn't require that it comes from the laity or from the ordained. All of us as people humbled before God, in whatever way we see that beautiful reality of God, to challenge the system by saying, no, we're going to love despite the fact that the system tells me to divide. I'm going to stretch and be an instrument of peace despite the fact that my theology is telling me to be suspicious. Because there is a reversal of theology when it's convenient, when my next promotion is to be a bishop. We just have to call it for what it is, people. When I have 25 years invested in a denomination, I'm not going to rock the boat. And it's time that we sink it and start again.
Any other questions?
So we ascribe the purpose of our political system as a means of bringing leadership and structure within a society, and also a sense of community. And in the same way, we see religion as that same tool that brings leadership and structure to a set culture, and also a sense of community. So with that in mind, what steps, if any, are being made, or would you like to see be made, to forge a bridge of sorts between our justice system and within the political arena where conflict resolution is concerned? And this question is for Reverend first.
I believe that all religions must begin by addressing racism. If I was to look at this question and start today, I think the number one inhibitor for any genuine progress in this country, for instance, is the inability for us to be honest about racism. Racism is taught. There's no gene. And it really does begin both at the breast of the mom and at home. And oftentimes, what we say that a religion teaches, we're not practicing it. So I think we need to begin there. The second thing I think we need to begin to do is realize that as people of faith, We cannot be driven by political platforms because no political platform is ever going to successfully execute the theological underpinnings of our faith. So I believe that people of faith, regardless of what that faith looks like, must be willing to live by that faith above and beyond what the political platforms are. And to begin to see politics as an aspect of civil society, but not the full representation of it. So I think faith needs to reclaim power in the civil society. And that means advocacy for education, prison reform, mental health care, gun violence, gang-related violence, and people in our community that continue to be marginalized. I have yet to hear one politician speak of indigenous communities in our own country in the United States. They continue to be the invisible people. And so I don't think we can be honest when we talk about racism when we still continue to marginalize First Nations. That is a very, very clear sign that we're not taking this seriously. And so I think racism is the very first thing, and the institutionalization that comes with everything from racism. Another thing we need to do as people of faith is rethink economic justice. And so therefore, the living wage idea is not something of privilege. We need to look at healthcare, we need to look at wages, and we need to look at insurance as issues of human right, not privilege. And so what we're doing is we're actually allowing, and diet, by the way. It's interesting how the more wealth one has to generate, the better that they can eat. So we are causing an entire segment of our population to end up becoming consumers of a medical system that wants to find what ways it can put you through the system, destroy your liver, give you medication that you probably don't need, because if you were eating better, you probably wouldn't need it in the first place. And if your insurance plan doesn't cover it, we'll put you in hospice, give you a dignified death, and get you out of here so that you can spend $5,000 to $6,000 in funeral costs. So I think that as people of faith, we need to look at all of this and ask ourselves, is the dignity of the human being, if we believe in eternity, I'm looking at you, my sister, no longer as a person in time. I'm looking at you as a person of eternity. And so I need to start treating you as such. Dignity is when we live into what we were created to be. And no one is an accident, and no one is human garbage. We all have a purpose. And so Viktor Frankl spoke of a man's search for meaning. Once we find meaning, then we are willing to suffer for one another. And that's the question of Ubuntu, isn't it? Yeah. I am fulfilled when I ensure that you are fulfilled. Yes. I see myself in you. This is Ubuntu. And so I think that that's the thing that we're missing. Once we become solidified in faith, politicians will then kneel. Because politicians know that we are divided, we're ignorant, and we're scrambled. But we need to remind them that voting is a job interview and that they can be fired.
I have a question for Kawalya and or maybe anybody else. This has to do with a very common problem we encounter either in the classroom or elsewhere about those who misinterpret Islam. You made the statement that Islam is a religion of peace, and we all agree. But there have been a lot of misinterpretations either of the teachings in the Quran or even some traditions of Islam. If we had a paper from Nigeria, the Boko Haram, you find out that when they kidnapped the girls, and in fact the more recent one, the leader of the Boko Haram said that he was going to give out those women, those girls. He was going to give them out, sell them actually, sell them, and they become wives to Muslims. And he said that this is what Allah told him to do. Definitely. Those of us who know better know that he is not authentic But then, along with other things that happen, either with the terrorist ISIS leaders that are killed, who have promoted terrorism and injustice, many people come out confused about really the nature of Islam. That confusion, especially among young people, and they see that. You think that's going to be a big problem for dialogue in Uganda? Do you have such prevalent misconceptions of Islam? Do you think it's going to be a big problem?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is one of the greatest challenges that I mentioned. Lack of knowledge for the faith. And this lack of knowledge is causing trouble. Now, it is going to be very dangerous if the real provider of knowledge doesn't know what he's talking about. Amen. All right? Yeah, if you're a preacher and then you don't know the concept that you are preaching, you are likely to be more dangerous to the recipients of knowledge. Just imagine a teacher is standing there and he doesn't know what he's teaching. Now, you're causing the students to misunderstand you and even get more confused and even get derailed from the real source of information. Now, what I know about Islam means peace. Mm-hmm. Like from the real greeting, Salam Alaikum. These two colleagues of mine, I think, are better in this area. That peace be upon you. It's just that you wish me, as he said, you wish peace to your brother, and he also does the same. Now, if it is interpreted as that, then where is the problem? So, like in my conclusion, really for sure, that lady, she's talking about a bridge to bridge between two divides. The other divide and this divide. The purpose is for one to cross from the point of ignorance to the point of knowledge. And that is the real crossing that she's talking about. Mm-hmm. Now, when you go there and you're extending your hand, the purpose is to know him and he also to know you. What you know, give it to the other. What you don't know also, seek knowledge about it. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is for you to give knowledge which is not right. Which is not right. Now, many people, those who teach Islam, maybe they don't teach it rightly, because what I know about Islam on this issue, Professor, is that whatever is in extreme is not Islam. Am I right?
Yes, it's bad.
That is a teaching, the prophetic teaching, that whatever is in the extreme. So Islam itself prohibits extremism. So Boko Haram, really, that lady, now I know much more about Boko Haram, the Nigerian lady. Is it really Islamic? Surely. Because it is teaching extremism, and Islam has disassociated itself from extremism. Mm-hmm. And the prophetic teaching is whatever is in the extreme is not Islam. Meaning, therefore, the reverse is true, that whatever is in the middle is what is Islam. Amen. That is what I mean. And that is what I understand. So, I don't know whether I'm trying to answer your question, Professor.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
It's absolutely right. It's like the universal life church.
Exactly.
That's not Christianity. It's the same thing.
The standard for defining what is Islam.
What is Islam? Islam is all about peace.
You are setting the middle part as the standard.
Exactly.
But is that the standard for everybody?
It is not because of lack of knowledge of each other. Mm-hmm. Knowing, my paper is talking about knowing the other, so that the attitudes, that you have towards me can be erased away by knowing me. Maybe I don't feel bad of you, and you think that I feel bad of you. Now you cross the bridge so that we can know each other, and then the attitude that you think that I have, that might not be there, is erased away. That's what I think.
It's also an ability to know what the faith is and then know how it's interpreted.
Exactly.
That's another thing too.
Thank you for saying that. But my problem is, I was a Muslim before. I just told you that. But I'm a Christian now. So I can see from the two sides to some extent. But there's a problem. And that is that looking at Christianity and Islam, hardly do you see Muslims, I'm serious, coming out audaciously and seriously against misinterpretation. There is extremists, Boko Haram. We are taught even as a child, somehow to hate the Christians. I'm just saying the truth. We hate them. Though you are not carrying the cutlass then to kill them. But in you, you are not accepting them. The way we are talking now, dialoguing. But within you, if not that you have overcome the conflict, you hate them. And even the other religion, but mostly the Christians. And you hardly see Muslims or people practicing Islam coming out seriously the way Christians criticize themselves. I mean, to actually analyze this thing and criticize and try to put things in the right perspective. Once it's Islam, everybody, let's allow. Is it the interest of Islam? Allahu Akbar. Everybody submit their cow. Even when it is an extreme idea. That is actually the game. And maybe, with us having a clearer mind here, we should be able to help. But the fear is there. If I speak out, before you know it, we have stories of such persons, few persons that have tried, and before you know it, you can't find them again. Maybe if within the group, some persons within the group can stand out and speak out, authoritatively, with knowledge, everything, balancing it, and having people among themselves sponsoring it, to establish the real truth and not say Islam overhaul no matter what. That is the problem. Maybe if we have such group of persons coming up, then there will be a balance. There will be mutual understanding and respect. There will be dialogue. And we can actually use religion to promote the well-being of all.
I was just going to suggest really quickly that if you look at every tradition in religious history, they go through phases prior to a reformation or a transformation. If I look at my own heritage, I'm Sephardic. So my heritage is Jewish from the south of Spain. But in 1492, the Roman Church told my descendants, you have a choice. You either convert, you die, or you're exiled. And so my name is Medina, which means city. But the King of Spain has put me as one of the Sephardic, and I'm also somewhat Irish. Yeah. There you go. But then what ends up happening is that's in 1492. In 1517, today, 501 years ago, you have the beginning of the Lutheran Reformation. There's already a lot of young voices in the United States that are Muslim, that are starting to talk about these issues in major universities and major theological centers about what does it mean to be a Muslim in a postmodern world. Mm-hmm. And in Judaism, it happened in the 1st century and right after the Maccabeans. So if you, and you look at that happening as well in Buddhism and in Hinduism, where you had the questions between Theravada and Mahayanan. So by the time it gets to Japan, there's a greater sense of syncretization, which what we call today Zen. So it happens, but over the course of time, we only get a puzzle piece of the entire kaleidoscope of what's happening. Change is going to come, and new voices are going to speak. But I think that we have to understand what the book really says, yes, and how people interpret it. And when you look at that, and I really believe that God gives us snapshots. And all of these great, beautiful texts are snapshots. But like a picture does not say the totality of the person, no book says the totality of the one who inspired it. And that's what we have to do. I believe that my faith is not having the answers, but it's living with the questions.
Okay, you wanted to...
You wanted, what did
Actually, since the second question arises, I wanted to add to the comments of our colleague, Dr. Isa. First, I would like to I'm not an Islamic scholar. I'm coming from a technical background. I'm an engineer, but combining engineering with sociology. But I have some knowledge of Islamic studies. Personally speaking, I believe in religious pluralist, as I already talked with our colleague, Dr. Medina. So I believe in Christianity, Judaism, Islam, even Buddhism. I would like to answer your question by raising a question. Imagine Burma, you call Burma or Myanmar? We call Myanmar, a country located in Southeast Asia, if I'm not wrong, near Thailand and Sri Lanka. So the majority are Buddhists. The minority are Muslims. They are killed because they are Muslims, nothing more. Their houses are burned. Their houses are burned. They are forced to leave the country, and now they are living in exile in Sri Lanka. Bangladesh. Bangladesh, maybe some in Thailand and other countries. More than 1 million people, they are living in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is also an Islamic country, but they do not tolerate this other Muslims. Yeah, wait. So, should we say that Buddhism is an extreme religion? No. If it is an extreme religion, so some people in India, other people in Bhutan, and in Thailand and other countries, they are practicing Buddhism. And other countries that I don't know. Or coming back to UAE, a model. So somehow my friends asking me, so you say pure Islam, where is this pure Islam practiced? This practice in UAE. United Emirates, where Muslims can have their mosque, Christians have their church, if I pronounce that correct, synagogue. So Jewish people can have their place. Temples, Indian people. You know, in Dubai, there are more than temples than other religion. In India, I saw a documentary. The Indian friend was asked, why don't you go home? He said, why I should go home? I'm doing my business here. I have my temple, my friends, my family, my wife is working here. I am doing business and we have the temple. So why we should go? Even a friend of ours yesterday, he mentioned that in UAE, the king, not the king, but we call that Khalifa, the head of UAE, Dubai, provided us financial support to construct the church. Yesterday, Dr. Baryan, I think, was talking about that. Now coming to, let's say, Afghanistan. Afghanistan, presently speaking, does not accept any other religion. But it takes time before such extremism. The majority of Jewish people are living in my country, specifically in my city. When I came here, the first day, on Sunday evening I came. On Monday I was invited my Jewish friends. I have the photos. Jack Abraham. Abraham is a Jewish word. I was invited with Afghan food, and he showed me that I love 3 countries, no more. Israel, Afghanistan, and USA. He is my Jewish friend. And he said, because of this extremists, we left Afghanistan, we left your city, the place where I was born. And there are many Jewish people living in Iran compared to now Israel. But they left Iran, Afghanistan, and other countries. But somehow some living in Uzbekistan and other countries. Now we have one Jewish. The problem is that extremism circulated the country, not circulated, they conquered the country, but due to misinterpretation. So I'm also a Muslim in practice, in whatever you say. My father is Muslim, my mother is Muslim. But I coexist with my Christian friends, with my non-believer friends, with my Jewish friends, and even taking photos, eating, we invite them, they are inviting me, and we discuss. That's called coexistence, and it takes time. Regarding your country, yeah, the case is very extreme. Not your country alone, my country and some other countries. We hope that in the future, scholars, Islamic scholars, scholars from Christianity, from other religion, they come together and integrately focus on somehow moderate, if I'm correct, a moderate understanding of Islam, Christianity, so that everyone, regardless of his or her religion, ethnicity, and other types of identity, they live together in a peaceful way. I hope I could answer your question. And just want to add one more point. When our prophet was appointed as a prophet, the first verse, surah is called verse, yeah?
Yeah.
The first verse which was descended to our prophet was Iqra. Iqra is Arabic word. It means read. It didn't say fight.
Seek knowledge.
Seek knowledge.
Yes,
Iqra.
right.
It's Arabic word. It's not my language, but I know some words. Iqra, it means read. Not fight. Not kill. It says read. Iqra bismi rabbika allazi. It means read by the name of God.
Yes. I want to add some.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay. My sister is an African like me, and she knows that the country in Africa that has got the biggest number of martyrs, saints now, is Uganda. Very many martyrs. But let me think and believe that she knows how they became martyrs. During those religious wars, the leader was a Muslim, then converted to Roman Catholic, then to Christianity, then to atheists. Because of the confusion, because of lack of what? Knowledge. So he ended up killing Muslims, killing Roman, killing Christians. In turns and in a row, because of ignorance. And the question is, when he was killing Muslims, he was a Roman Catholic. When he was killing Anglicans, because these matters are there in the shrine, when he was killing Roman Catholics, he was Anglican. When he was killing Muslims initially, he was Roman Catholic. Simply because of lack of ignorance. And I think we've got a big number of martyrs and saints in Uganda than any other part of Africa. This is because of that. And therefore, like he said, with all the due respect, like he said, let us take the middle course, the middle road, and then seek knowledge before we make mistakes. In the case of Nigeria, it is totally ignorance of that group and other vested interests of the funders. She knows, really for sure. If we go to the politics of ISIS and Boko Haram, you know really for sure that these ideological differences, these are external factors. And they can really penetrate from any angle. And then you become a victim of circumstances. So let us seek the middle road if we want peace, tranquility, and coexistence. Because we have no options, ladies and gentlemen. We must coexist on this blue planet. We are not going to go to Mars. We are not going anywhere. Right. All right? So whatever option, whatever narratives, whatever discussions, the answer is one, coexistence. And we can only coexist, as the professor said, interfaith, dialogue, and then the answer is leave it or quit the earth. Either go underground into the grave or go to the moon.
I just have one,
Yes, please.
I would say, seek advice from you, Dr. Sir. by serendipity, that is a parazar, or by accident, you are a product of interfaith marriage. And by accident, you are also sitting in between a Christian and a Muslim. What advice would you give to those who are planning on going into mixed marriage, that is interfaith marriage, interethnic marriages?
Before you even sit, the answer, my brother, from a practical perspective, is tolerance. Okay? Tolerance, listening should be the greatest skill that you must have. Understanding. Okay? When you have those three, then you have solved the puzzle. Look, I have told you my experience that when I visit my mother, a very strong in Makerere University, where I grew up. My father is an academic, so we're always in those angles. She could say 3-1-1, meaning that you choose that option of not going back to any other options. My mother is a very strong Catholic to the extent that every other day she can decide to have mass with a village catechist. Now, when I go there, she's the first person, one, to give me a praying mat, to give me water to get ablution to pray, and then to ask others whether there is anything that can derail me and change my attitude for the day. That is tolerance of the highest order, that somebody who sits on the extreme side of the angle is accepting the other one sitting on the extreme side of the angle. So in life,
It's called love.
yeah, well, whether that is love, but yes, it is love, because I'm a son, but then I think that it's more than that. It is more than that because I am a human being, all right? And I have seen her doing the same to somebody who is not even related to her.
I think she has love.
So, yes, she has love for me, biological love, and then she has got love which you can call tolerance for others, which we can really adopt here. And we start and then say, from an individual, remember my recommendation? As an individual, do you tolerate so that others can also learn from you how to tolerate? And then it becomes a structure of community that all of us really love, all of us really tolerate, all of us really go to another angle and think that there is another day after today, there is the tomorrow after tomorrow, and then we shall continue. So for my sister here, Boko Haram is very dangerous because these are people of extreme divergent views backed with ignorance. Yes, ignorance of Islam. They don't know what Islam talks about in these issues. That's why ISIS has failed. From the ideological and theological point of view, it failed from that level. Lack of knowledge of what they are talking about. You can't preach what you don't know. And you think one time one student shall stand up and say, Professor, I think you are wrong. And that will be very dangerous.
Well, let me follow up your answer. If he had asked your father the very same question he asked you about marrying, interfaith marriage, do you think your dad would have given the same answer? Or do you think your dad would have said, marry persons and not religion? You think that's what your father would have said? Maybe?
I think...
And do you think we can get all religions actually to adopt that view? It's like, marry persons you love. Don't marry religion.
The former is right. Marry a person you love. And be ready to tolerate her or him.
Toleration is a word
yes.
I find a little bit negative. Tolerate, not tolerate.
Let me land, Professor. Listen to her, tolerate her, understand her.
You're still with
Yes, I repeat. Yeah, well, definitely all those words shall come in, because we are multi-religious, and we don't have any options on that. We don't have any choices on that. So what answer do you expect him to give you, apart from marry her because you love her? The other issue of difference is secondary now, okay? Because you are going to accept that difference. Because you don't have an option.
All right.
I have, thank you very, this way or this way? This way?
That way, yeah.
Okay. The more we talk, the more I have to say, so let me just say two things, okay? The first, we talk about Islam and ISIS, and very quickly, it's not about Islam, it's about an ethnic group being excluded and being very frightened and trying to find a way to defend itself. I think that would more explain ISIS. And then the Islam is the gloss or the argument. But I wanted to follow up what we were saying about, we said Islam is basically a religion of peace. And the idea of saying a religion is a religion of peace, every Saturday we lift up the Torah and say all her paths are peace. And, you know, part of it is wipe out the Canaanites, every man, woman, and child. So what are what are we talking about? But what you kept talking and you answered my question, but I still want to. You said what we're really looking at is snapshots.
Yes.
And over the course of time, we get a piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
And the religions we're looking at are really developments over cultural developments over years and years and years, and with many manifestations and many incarnations, and some of them have not been peaceful. And it's for us to work on those manifestations or develop those manifestations which are the best for humanity, the best, I would say, which represent compassion and concern. But if you say, what is Judaism, what is Islam, there are incarnations which I would not want to identify with. But you cannot say they're not. It's another incarnation. So, okay.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. I think we are very good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. I'm going to step back a little bit.